Hi everyone, my name is Mia and this is going to be my first book review. I'm really nervous but also excited, and today the book I'm going to review is Underground by Haruki Murakami. A quick footnote for those who don't know, which is everybody because this is my first video. I'm new at this, I don't really know what I'm doing yet, so I probably will just end up rambling for the first video. Maybe the first few afterwards, but hopefully it will be good enough. So, the plot of this is basically a non-fiction interview style book about Murakami Haruki, and he writes, he goes around and interviews people from the 1995 sarin gas attack in Tokyo. It is one of the only, as far as I know, in recent history, one of the only terrorist attacks that Japan has had, because Japan is, if you don't know, is a very peaceful country. And after World War II, there was basically no kind of like just no war really, and no kind of terrorism. So when this happened, it was such like a big thing for everybody. And in this book he interviews a mix of people. The first part of it is about it's split into two parts based on the victims of the sarin gas attack. So people who are on the train commuting to work and, you know, just going to their jobs, and then they just happen to be caught up at the wrong moment. And then the second half is about, he interviews people who were in the terrorist organisation that, what's the word? I know the word. It's about the people who are in the organisation, and not necessarily the people who carried the gas attack out, but obviously it was an organisation that had over like 1,000 members. Only 5 people carried out this attack, but it's about the other people in it who necessarily didn't go into this organisation for those reasons, to attack innocent people. They just were religious. So it's, you know, got both sides of the story in this sense. Even if you don't necessarily agree with the cult, you can see which side they were coming from before everything happened. So now I'm going to go into detail about what happens to this book. Obviously it's non-fiction, so all of it is real, so there's no like spoiler kind of thing. But if you still want to read this and you don't really want to know what happens, then, you know, spoiler alert, please leave now, and then maybe come back and see my review. I took my glasses off because it is way too hot here. So throughout this book there's different multiple perspectives of people who were on the train at the time of the gas attack. It's a mixture of both men and women, young and old, and Murakami basically just interviews them and asks them, like, you know, where were you sat that day on the train, you know, what happened after you felt the sarin, you know, affect you, did you see anything like out of the ordinary, which a lot of things were out of the ordinary in that point, but, you know, anything that was stuck in your mind particularly. In this case, I saw a lot of the things that made me annoyed about Japanese society a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I love Japanese society, but a lot of the people in this book said, oh, I'll just carry on going to work, you know, even though we've been told that it's been a gas attack and they can see other people have like collapsed on the floor and it's obviously affecting people and they feel ill themselves, but they're like, well, I can't miss work. So you're just kind of like, why? But no, I understand why people would have gone to work, because obviously it is, you know, maybe you just don't assume it's going to happen to you, even if you can see it happening to a lot of other people. But it's one of the things that annoys me a little bit about Japanese society, how it's so ingrained about work, and sometimes you need to be a little bit selfish, because some people in this book, they went to work and because of that their symptoms got worse and actually it affects them later on in life. But if they had gone originally when they felt something was wrong, then they would have probably only had minor side effects, if not any at all afterwards. But it was so ingrained that they had to go straight to work and get the hours in that they have to do, that they, you know, they went later, and because of that it had a strong effect on them in the future. Another thing about this book I also liked was that Murakami also points out at the beginning that unlike the media that portrayed the gas attack, it focused more on the perpetrators of the cult. Orm is what the cult was called that did the gas attack. Instead of talking about all of the Orm cult members, he decided to focus more on the victims and make it, you know, shown that they were more, that it's more about them. You shouldn't give the cult members the attention that they want, and you should focus more on the victims so they can get more help. And I just really like the way that he did that, because it just wasn't, what's the word, it just wasn't, I like learning about perpetrators like that, like about, I'm a person who likes learning about the Holocaust, which a lot of my family find really funny because they're like, that's very depressing, but I like learning stuff about that, like what drives a person to do something like that. What makes you think, oh, I want to kill this person for whatever reason, religious or scientific or whatever. That really interests me. But never do you really see in a book normally about the victim's point of view. It's normally about the perpetrator. And Murakami, would say, I wanted to portray this book mostly to be about the victims, and originally it was. The part about the Orm cult members was only published afterwards, about, I don't know how long it was, maybe like a couple of years after, and it was published in the end of this book. It's maybe like about maybe this much of the book. This bit is all of the victims, this bit is about the cult members. So you can see majority of it is the cult members, and it was only by popular demand that he put this last little quarter in. The reason why he put it back in was because he realised that although the media only really talks about the perpetrators and doesn't really talk about the victims, he was also doing the same thing by just talking about the victims and not the perpetrators. So he done it the opposite way, which in this case is fine. Both ways are fine, but he realised that he didn't want that. He wanted to show both sides of the story, good and bad, you know, morally right, morally wrong, you know, whatever. He wanted it to, you know, show that no matter what, you should always hear both sides of the story. Even if you know 100% that something is wrong, you should always show both sides of the story just so you can understand everything that has happened from every different point of view. And I really liked how he did that in here. I also really like how in this book I tabbed a lot of things in my little llamas. I tagged a lot of things that I liked, like a lot of quotes. Like, for example, one of the victims of the gas attack, let me remember what his name is, Toyoda Toshiaki, age 52. He said that he met a man a few days after the gas attack on the train, and the man said, "Alive and well, you've still got things to do, don't give up the fight." And then he continues on to say, "It's such an encouragement just to get a cheerful greeting, nothing comes of hatred." About a quarter away through this book there was also another part, but this was particularly saddening. There was if you don't know, the sarin gas attack only killed, when I say only, obviously any death is heartbreaking, but what could have killed thousands of people only ended up killing 12, because the Orm cult did not purify the sarin gas, and because they didn't purify it, it only killed 12 people and ended up injuring over 5,000. However, those 5,000 people could have been killed if they hadn't have purified that gas. So although it is horrible to think all those things, it is sometimes, necessary to be grateful that what could have been a lot worse. But in this case, this lady called Shizuko, it's not her real name, it's a fake name that the family wanted to give her because they wanted to, you know, give her some peace. And she basically was one of the people on the train, and she ended up inhaling so much sarin gas that it caused her to become a vegetable, which, you know, is heartbreaking. Hearing so many of the stories where people are able to carry on with their lives and they may only have like small side effects, but then this woman is just, although right now she can kind of talk and she can sit upright in a wheelchair and she is kind of mobile, she's basically locked in her own memory. She can't remember anything before the gas attack. It's very hard for her to remember things recently, so people have to remind her, and she can't really talk. She can only make noises, but she's completely there in her head. Apart from her memory, she is still the same person, same personality. She's just locked in because the sarin affected her that badly. And this is the quote that Murakami wrote about Shizuko. People the world over turn to religion for salvation, but when religion hurts and maims, where are they to go for salvation? As I talked to Shizuko, I try to look into her eyes now and then. Just what did she see? What lit up those eyes? If ever she gets well enough to speak unhindered, that's something I'd want to ask. That day I came to visit, what did you see? But that day is still far off. Before that comes Disneyland. Disneyland was one of the places that in her memory she could remember going to. And when they said, what is the one place you want to go to when you will be able to walk again? And she said Disneyland. Hence why this particular segment is pretty heartbreaking, because she may never be able to go to Disneyland. In terms of the second half of the book, where they talk about the Orm cult members, part of me understood where they were coming from and how they left their families and wanted to, you know, find salvation without having any pleasures in life, like clothes, food. So they have to have the minimum and everything, like they would only eat rice and plain vegetables and stuff like that, and they would only wear like the basic clothes. They couldn't have any pleasures. They had to give up all of that to find salvation. Although I understand kind of where they were coming from, personally I'm not a religious person, so I don't really necessarily agree with them. But reading about this made me stop and think, you know, maybe not all of the cult members, you know, were seen as evil. Those 5 people that carried the gas attack out, personally I think they were evil, in sense of the fact that although they believed they were doing the right thing for their master, they ultimately killed people, and I completely don't agree with that, whatever religion you are. But for the other people who went to the cult just to find their salvation, just to find like they belonged somewhere in the world, and they didn't sign up for this act of murder and just killing of innocent people, I kind of sympathise with them, because, you know, some people do find comfort in religion, and I might not be one of those people, but some people really do want to find themselves in religious practices. So I really think that reading this book has changed my outlook on the difference between, well, not the difference, where on the spectrum where evil and you can be in the same cult in this case, but they were doing their own thing. They weren't necessarily going to go and do whatever this master overlord of Orm wanted them to do. They were there just to look after themselves because they thought it was the right way, just like how people think Christianity is the right way, you know, or you know, different religions, people were just looking out for themselves, and somehow along the way it got corrupted. But originally they didn't think it that way. So it's really made me think about religion, in the sense that you can't just put them all in one group together. You have to sometimes separate them all, in these kind of cases anyway. Overall, I would probably give this book maybe a 4.5, 5 out of stars. I don't normally, factual books like this I can get quite boring for me very quickly, and some aspects where like they were repeating over again, like, oh, I got on this train at this time, blah blah blah, you know, it's repeated many times in like the leading up to what happened to each victim before the gas attack, and it can be a little bit like, oh come on, get to the point, like, you know. But I also really liked it because it shows that even the most mundane people, the most ordinary people in life, can be pulled into something that can end up either destroying their life or severely changing it, and it not for the best at all. And this book, although it didn't make me cry, I felt very emotionally invested in the people and all of the different